to talk about Ace Frehley first. This is a fucking wild story, just mainly because of how weird the members of Kiss have become. At this point, you got to understand, man, these guys started in 1973. So that's a hell of a long time to have been hitting the road and living that type of life. And you can tell because you see these motherfuckers. Ugh, it's kind of sad. The Kiss costumes, they've stayed the same over the years. And I respect the guys for still coming out in that shit. But, you know, you're talking about guys that are in their fucking 70s who are coming out essentially shirtless, wearing skin-tight spandex. Ace and Peter Criss have been fully fucking replaced and have been for years. To start it from the start, this all happens when Kiss goes on the Howard Stern show because they were plugging some of their upcoming shit, and Howard had asked them about why they didn't play the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
For us to go on stage, they were demanding, quite honestly, that we play with the two original guys, Peter and Ace. And at this point, that would be demeaning to the band and also would give some people confusion. Because if you saw people on stage who looked like Kiss but sounded like that, maybe we should be called Piss.
Right.
So Paul Stanley right there is basically saying that Ace and Peter Criss play like dog shit at this point. They cannot hang with the brilliance of the remaining fucking equally old as fuck Kiss members. Ace and Peter have been replaced multiple times. Those two, in terms of both lead guitarist and drummer, those guys are highly influential, especially Ace. And I always wondered why do these guys have such fucking beef with Ace? He's clearly, an all-time great guitarist. I don't know. Once again, the guy's in his 70s. It's possible that he's lost his ability to play. But once again, I refuse to believe that Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons are on such a high level still. You know what I'm saying? So it's weird for them to use that as the excuse to go out on a show like the Howard Stern show and just flat out say, those motherfuckers can't play, and if we played with them, we'd sound like shit, and that's why we didn't play at the fucking Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And, it's got to be weird for the other two guys. Honestly, I don't even know their fucking names. I'm a fan of the original Kiss. I don't fuck with any scab members. However, they have been playing in the band for, over 10 years. They both took on the mantle, if you will, of the Starman and the fucking Catman or whatever the fuck Peter Criss is supposed to be. And so, I mean, that's full on disrespect. In the past, when Ace and Peter would get fired, they would be replaced by guys who would wear different makeup so as not to say like, listen, I'm not trying to say I'm Ace, but at this point, they're saying this is Ace's replacement. He is playing the character going forward. And so I'm sure there's hurt feelings about that. Every now and again, when money dictates, Paul and Gene will go back to Peter and Ace and say, oh man, hey, let's get it back together. And then as soon as the check clears, they're like, you know what? Fuck those guys. They fucking suck. I've always hated that motherfucker. Fuck his mom. I had always questioned, like, why? Why the beef? Why do you hate these motherfuckers so much? And I can't speak for Peter Criss, but I'll tell you this. Now that I've never really heard Ace Frehley speak. Now that I have, holy shit, that guy must be insufferable to be around. He says he's been sober for 8 years and fucking awesome. I choose to believe that. But this motherfucker sounds perma drunk. If you don't take him at his word saying, well, I've been sober 8 years, you would say, no fucking way. This guy sounds trashed 24/7. Like I said, I choose to believe him because I do know people like that who, like, they did so much acid that now they're like 20 years removed and they're like, hey man. And I think that's probably what's happened here with Ace. He sounds like he's got 2 fucking brain cells left and those motherfuckers are fighting and they don't agree because he's just, the shit he says here is just outlandish to me. We'll get into it because after the Stern thing, Ace calls in to Eddie Trunk's show, also on Sirius XM. And what followed was some of the most fucking confusing shit that I may have ever seen on a talk show. Eddie Trunk is a fucking saint to even talk to this motherfucker, because I can't imagine, like, unless he's paying you, why would you be friends with this fuck? And you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's hear from my boy Ace Frehley, who's been sober for 8 fucking years, apparently. I'm not saying he's not, but...
Well, you know, those guys have been bad-mouthing me since I quit the very first time in 1981, 1982. You know, calling me out, calling me a drug addict, calling me an alcoholic, saying I'm unemployable, I'm undependable, blah, blah, blah. And then...
I just had to stop there because they said I'm unemployable and undependable. The guy's a fucking rock star. Do you have to hand out resumes? Does somebody not just call Ace Frehley on the phone and say, hey, dude, I got this fucking project. Are you interested or whatever? Does he have to go get on like Indeed.com and upload his resume? 1973 through fucking whatever it was, 2000, whatever. Guitar player / drug taker in Kiss. It's going to look like shit if I have a big, space between jobs. Because really, you just kept going back to the same fucking job and they keep firing you. If I was looking for a rock guitarist, I would say, this guy's undependable and unhireable.
When we did the Unplugged thing for MTV, all of a sudden, I'm offered millions of dollars to come back to the band, and what happened? Now I'm not a drug addict, and I'm dependable, and you're willing to take a shot at hiring me again? In fact, they offered me more money than they offered Peter.
And he's just fucking rambling. There is no point to what this motherfucker is saying. At some point, he starts like bragging about how fucking tough he is and like how much violence has been put upon him, that he's been shot and stabbed, like just basically that he's gotten the shit kicked out of him over and over again. Here, listen to this.
He doesn't realize I grew up in the streets, and was in gangs, been in jail, been shot, been stabbed, had guns put to my head, been knocked out, been thrown in jail. So, I mean, I don't care how anybody who I'll go up against the guy twice my size. I don't care. It's just in my blood.
I never understood dudes who like bragged about how much they've gotten the shit kicked out of them. It's like, oh man, I've been fucking stabbed. People fucking slapped me in front of my mom. They choked the shit out of me, pissed on my face. But that's like them telling you how tough they are. Sounds to me like you're not that fucking tough. It sounds to me like everybody just beats the shit out of you. From there, Ace would go on to throw a little shade himself at the vocal stylings of one Paul Stanley.
No, it's just, you know what it is? It's Paul's frustration and insecurity that he has to use backing tapes, and we're only 6 months apart, and I can still get up there and belt it out and hit the keys that he can't. And it's very unfortunate. And I'm very sad that the fact that he's using backing tracks, it's cheapening the brand.
So after that, in true street fashion, like a gang boss, Ace Frehley puts the fucking hammer down and says, you have 7 days to give me a formal apology or else.
As far as what he said on Howard Stern, I'm going to make a statement to Paul Stanley right now. And Paul, if you're not listening, I'm sure one of your associates in the KISS group are, and I'm telling you that I want a formal apology for what you said, and a retraction and an apology within 7 days. And if I don't get that within 7 days, I'm coming back on Ed Trunk's show, and I'm going to tell some dirt that nobody knows about Paul and Gene, that I've always kept to myself. I'm not the kind of guy who kisses and tells,
And almost like something, once again, pulled out of like one of these mafia TV shows or something like that. Ace claims to have a fucking secret, like a dossier of shit that he's written about all these terrible things that apparently Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons have done. It's a whole fucking thing. Who knew that this ran so deep? Anyway, listen to Ace explain it.
I have a 120-page manuscript that I wrote after I finished my book, and my attorney has it in the safety deposit box. God forbid anything happens to me, my attorney is instructed to release it to the New York Times, Rolling Stone, API, everybody. So, I mean, they can't intimidate me with, like, you know, trying to hurt me or say, you better not say anything about me live on the radio, because then they're totally screwed. Their careers will be ruined.
And like a badass there with the evil laugh at the end, their careers will be ruined. So from there, everybody's like, what the fuck? The 7 days have passed. There's no public apology from the Kiss camp. So our boy Ace Frehley goes back on the Eddie Trunk show and really basically rambled on about his fucking phone provider endlessly. But it's moments like that when you're like, wow, this is really like a 70-year-old dude. Because you would imagine like your grandpa would sit there and have a 20-minute conversation with you about their phone provider and the bill and shit like that. And then in August, I paid $94. But then the next month, a bill went down to $84 and shit like that. You know how it is. And as soon as Ace got on to the Eddie Trunk show on Sirius XM, I think it's Trunk Nation. As soon as he gets on there, he does say that he did receive a phone call from Paul Stanley, and it was not quite what he expected.
I saw his name come up on my cell phone, and I spoke to him 100 different times on that number. And that can be verified by Verizon, who is my cell phone carrier. So, you know, I figured he was calling me maybe to apologize or at least explain why he said that. Maybe he meant it really more towards Peter than me. And
real quick, if you listen to both interviews, there are various times where Ace infers that had they just shit on Peter Criss and not him, he'd have no problem. He would have no problem watching Peter Criss get kicked in the nuts and put out on the curb. He must also feel that Peter Criss really can't fucking play anymore. He continues with the story of Paul Stanley calling him on his Verizon phone, which you can verify through the phone records.
Instead of an apology, I got a 5-second phone call which said, "Fuck you, Ace. I'm not going to apologize." And hung up. He wasn't even man enough to let me give a rebuttal and explain why I'm so upset.
So this is something where you can kind of tell that Ace Frehley is probably a huge pain in the ass. Because if someone threatened my entire livelihood, if someone threatened to leak some dirt that's going to end my career, and if you're Paul Stanley, odds are there's a lot of shit out there people don't know about. You know, 4 fucking decades as a famous rock star. I'm sure this guy's done some pretty fucked up shit. Fairly dark shit. And then when you call him and say, hey, dude, fuck you, bye. And this guy's like, why are you mad? You don't even have the manhood. He had the manhood to call you and tell you to fuck off. But like, to expect Paul Stanley to want to hear what you have to say after you've threatened his entire fucking livelihood is ridiculous. Anyway, we continue.
And if you look for your emails, messages that I sent you, I did screen grabs. You saw that. So you're verifying that Paul S. called me and a 5-second phone call.
You sent me the screen grab.
You know, some idiot out there might say, oh, well, Ace is a graphic artist. He's really good at Photoshop. He could have probably Photoshopped it. Well, guess what? It's still on the servers, and it's I'm still going to get a bill from Verizon.
Right.
And it's going to say a 5-second phone call from PS Paul Stanley.
It really is like if you had a rock and roll grandpa and you had to fucking talk to him. It's like, holy shit. He is getting into every bit of minutia surrounding this.
Now, I told Doc McGee this whole story, and you know what he came back with? He said, Paul said he never called you, number one. Number two, Doc said to me, well, he uses like AT&T.
So wait a minute.
When did smarter than that when it came to cell phones? You know what? I would have been happy if Paul would have just called me one-on-one like a man and apologized. That would have sufficed. But after cursing me out on the phone, the gloves are off.
Do they really think that it matters if I call from an AT&T phone and you call from a Verizon phone? Like, that's untraceable? Oh, dude, there's no way he can prove it. I'm on AT&T. There's fucking, whatever. But watch out. Because fucking Ace Frehley is a graphic artist. He will Photoshop some bullshit documents. Believe that. Wow. And then, dude, did he ever drop any dirt? I listened to as much of the goddamn interview as I could deal with. I never heard him drop anything of any substance. He just stammered and just went on and on about fucking Verizon versus AT&T, but it's on the servers. I can prove it. And, he wants to sue now for defamation of character because they're insinuating he can't play. And when your job is that you're a guitar player and they say you can't play, I guess on some level that probably is some level of defamation. But Ace Frehley, he does not take shit, and when you hit him, he's gonna hit you back hard. And if you want to fuck with him, he's got the receipts. He will spill the tea. He's on Verizon, and as a result, he has access to voluminous amounts of data and screenshots. Can you imagine what Ace Frehley's phone looks like? Like, what's on there? It's got to be insanity. Anyways. This story will continue to evolve, I'm sure, because when it comes to Kiss, it's not over till these motherfuckers are all in the ground. They will be even more elderly than they are now, just fighting it out. They'll be in the goddamn, the rock and roll fucking rest home, trying to throw shitty punches at each other and half-ass kicks, wearing full fucking spandex and all that good shit. I can't wait for it. If anything happens, we will update you. Anyways, moving on.